Hey everyone, my name is Ryan H. Lewis, and back again with another update to this serverless framework. We are at version 1.14, and the serverless team themselves said this is a very special release, and I couldn't agree more. The main event here is the addition of Google Cloud Platform as a first-class provider on the serverless framework. Google Cloud Platform joins the ranks of Amazon Web Services, Microsoft Azure, and IBM OpenWhisk as one of the main providers that the serverless framework supports. So this is a pretty cool big deal. I went ahead and took the liberty to try this out, and you can see that there's a new template available from serverless that is the Google Node.js project. Currently, Google Cloud Functions only support Node.js, so that's really the only language you can use with serverless. The installation is a little different. You do need to do an npm install, and then once that's done, you'll need to go into your project and get the ID of the project that you're going to be deploying to, and you'll modify your serverless YAML. You'll update that project property. There's also a credentials file there, and you'll need to fill that out ahead of time. I did some kind of behind the scenes work, so it was not this easy to get it going. I had to set up and enable some APIs in the Cloud Platform console. And you can see it's deployed, and if I click on it, it goes out and it shows my hello world, all thanks to serverless. Now for some of the more usual features that you expect in a serverless framework release. 1.14 adds the addition of the rollback functionality for AWS users. The rollback functionality has existed for quite some time, where if you've done a serverless deploy and maybe something goes wrong, you can roll back all your changes, including the CloudFormation changes. Rollback function enables you to roll back just a specific function, and it's actually doing this by changing the active version on your AWS Lambda. So the code is still deployed, but it's pointing to a different version. The serverless team suggests that you don't leave this as kind of a permanent solution. It's more for if you do a deployment and there's an immediate break, you can use this rollback function and then actually deploy out a fix for the code soon after. The main reason is that this rollback function command kind of puts your serverless deployment in a out of sync state. So it's much better to get this taken care of and get everything smoothed out. I tried this out as well. Here I'm doing a serverless deploy. This is on the basic Hello World serverless Node.js project for AWS. Once I deploy that out, I go in and I make some changes to the handler. We'll change that serverless version 1.0 to a 1.14. Oh yeah. And then if I redeploy this, AWS and serverless are going to create a new version of that code. So the previous version will live on in AWS Lambda. And then we've got this new version. To look at those versions, you can use the serverless deploy list functions command. And you'll see I've got my function called hello. There's two versions, 11, 10, and then the $latest. If I use the rollback function command, I say which function I want to roll back and which version I want to roll back to, in this case 10. And if I move over to my console, you'll see that version 10, this is the 1.0 code, is latest. And if I change to version 11 with the 1.14, you'll see that this is grayed out, so it's not the latest code anymore, meaning my Lambda has been successfully rolled back. Another AWS feature is the addition of DeadLetterConfig support. To be honest, I had no idea what this was before this feature dropped, so I did a little research, and it's actually quite cool. Basically, if an event comes into a Lambda, and for some reason the Lambda fails to execute successfully, you can configure the Lambda to send that event to some type of queue called a dead letter queue that can provide some place where you can collect those to check on them later or maybe be notified with these events that are failing. 1.14 adds support for this dead letter config through your serverless YAML. What it looks like is there's the addition of this on error property for your functions, and you can give it an SNS ARN, and it will tell the Lambda to send those events to that SNS endpoint. Currently, even though DeadLetterConfig works with SNS and SQS, serverless only supports SNS. There's some weird race conditions or bugs with SQS, and they're working that out. They should have that out soon. Another AWS feature is the ability to get configuration variables from an S3 bucket. Let's say that you have some object in a bucket out in S3, and it has a single string in the file, you can bring that in and use it as a variable to populate something like a property in your serverless YAML. You use the $ curly brace S3 protocol, sort of like you do the file handler or any other type of variable in serverless. Then you provide the bucket and the object. I messed around with this a bit, and it appears that the object can only contain a single string. You can't have multiple variables in there that can then be processed into multiple properties. It's just a single value right now, but it's still really nice to be able to get that out of S3. Why would you want to use something like this? Well, there's a potential that you could have some property that may be slightly sensitive, or you may have someone else modifying things in an S3 bucket and you want to bring those down for your serverless deployments. There's a lot of different use cases, and it's nice to just see this. It kind of expands the possibilities of what you can do with a serverless configuration. Next up are a few more AWS enhancements to API Gateway. We've got some added HTTP integration types with the HTTP proxy and the mock integration types. I haven't actually used these personally, but these are different ways that you can configure your API gateway to respond, and having these available in serverless is obviously a good thing. In addition, you can now configure your API gateways to authenticate with IAM roles. Basically, you can have your API gateway only respond to requests that have appropriate IAM permissions. And finally, this new feature, the local environment variable, it's currently only available for AWS users, but as of 1.15, it's going to be available to everyone. Essentially, this is creating an environment variable that lets you know that your serverless function is being invoked locally. You can see in this node.js example, I've got the process.env.is_local environment variable. That's going to be created by your serverless whenever you're calling invoke local. This will help you block off code in your function that may only need to execute when it's running in the server, or if you want code to only run when it's being run locally. In either case, if you had this use case before, you were probably doing this custom. Now serverless ships with this out of the box. And that's it for all the features in 1.14. If you want to get to the newest version, you can use the npm update-g serverless command. And if you want to read the blog entry or read some of the documentation on this stuff, you can check out serverless on the web at serverless.com. Are you a Google Cloud user who's excited that you can finally use the serverless framework with your cloud functions? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to give this video a like and subscribe to my channel for more videos on serverless, AWS, and web technologies. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.